Christ being born in us. This is something the mystics talk a lot about, though the experts of spiritual and interior prayer speak a lot of. We can argue all day long about the historical basis of things like the resurrection, the virgin birth, the this, the that. To a large extent, we'll never know. The important thing, and if you think we'll know, fine, but the important thing really is that Christ is born in us. Because if Christ isn't born in us, then we may have a PhD in ancient history and able to argue a thesis, but what good will it do us? On our deathbed, in our decision making, in our lives, what good will it do us? Little. So, Meister Eckhart says that Christ must be born in us. God must be born in us moment to moment, and he's going to posit how that's done. St. Ambrose had said it in the 4th century. I remember looking at that in seminary. The same as Christ is born in a stable today, so must he be born in our hearts. God is, his disciple will later say, intimior intimo meo et altior altius meus. If I'm not carving up the Latin wrongly, God is more interior than my deepest interior, and God is more intimate than my deepest intimacy, and higher than the highest within me, my highest thoughts. Okay, kill your activities, says Meister Eckhart here. This is how he concludes his chapter on Christ being born in us. Kill your activities, still your powers, if you would realize this birth in yourself. To find the newborn king in you, all else you must find must be passed by and left behind, like St. John of the Cross on the Mount Carmelo. Not this, not this, not this, not this. Until, because one isn't getting stuck on the side contours, on going off on tangents, but going directly up the mountain by denial, by taking up one's cross and denying oneself. Okay, kill your activities, still your powers. If you realize this birth in yourself, to find the newborn king in you, all else you must find must be passed by and left behind. May we strip and leave behind those things that are not pleasing to the newborn king. So help us, Jesus, who became the child of man, that we might become the children of God. Meister Eckhart says in this article that ultimately there's the powers of the soul. So the things that feed the soul, the ear gates, the eye gates, the taste, the sensation gate. But he says these are often tainted by sin, and God does not dwell with the sinful. God communicates himself and his life, which is our life. What different life could there be? As we see in Genesis, where God breathes his spirit, his pneuma, into Adam and Eve, and they became living beings. And the Christ who comes after is a life-giving spirit who breathes his spirit out upon his disciples after his resurrection. Where does this new life, this life of the soul, this life of the spirit come to us? It comes in the ground of our being, the Grund, as Meister Eckhart and Paul Tillich after him will say. The ground of our being, the very epicenter of the soul. There God breathes his being into our being. There God is, radiating out into every cavity and into every pore, into every cell of our being. We're made of trillions of cells. And as I as I look at with my students, there's not one scientist or team of scientists in all the world can make one cell with all the billions of pounds, the AI technologies, the this, the that. Not one can we make a cell, because the more we know, the further away we get from being able to do that. All we can do is manipulate what God has already created, what's there. So we discover God in the center of our being, and therefore, Meister Eckhart's saying, come back to your center, return to the center. Father Bede Griffiths has an excellent book on that, Return to the Center, which is going to look at basically the interior life in both the East and the West. I haven't read this in some time, but it is an excellent read in that genre. I read this last night, at least the part on the Jews last night. Mind-blowing stuff. The marriage of East and West. And this is looking at is the interplay between the various religions. How none of them exist in a hermetic seal. The Jews are because of the Christians. The Christians are because of the Jews. Why do I say that? Well, Jesus was a Jewish Messiah. Paul was a Jew. Nearly all of the biblical characters were Jews, as I've been looking at in the last few months. There is no Christianity without Judaism, period. However, there's no Judaism as it exists today without Christianity, because the Christians have influenced the emergence of rabbinical Judaism. Fact, the emergence of Orthodox Judaism, the emergence of Reformed and Conservative Judaism has been as a result of the coming of Judaism coming into contact and clash with and tension with their Christian neighbors. Islam and Christianity, they don't exist hermetically sealed, and so on and so forth. And then this author is going to look at, well, what's the central message in each one of these great traditions? And when he's looking at the Judaic revelation, he speaks of, the use of the word mythology. And what that really is the sacramentology of the Bible, that these are great and ancient stories that may have historical basis. They may well have. And there'll be a whole spectrum of different belief on that, from those who deny certain things like Exodus taking place, the great parting of the Red Sea, etc., to those who say, no, it's substantially historical. It took place. It's in my Bible. But what's really key is, what do these ancient stories point to? What do they point to in my soul? Because otherwise, it has no connection in my life. And I think that's often what's happened in religion, is particularly in Christianity, is that people have been left saying, well, that's great, but what difference does it make in my life? Returning to Meister Eckhart, when he's saying, if you want Jesus to be born into your soul, the newborn king, then you have to create a space for him. You have to come away from the eye gate, the ears, the senses that are distracting and dispersing you among the creature, as it were, so that you can discover the creator within. You can discover the source within. It's, almost like cease floating down the river and come to the source of the river, the crystalline source. And this is a direct encounter. Now, I actually think that it's there that we can learn from the great arts of interior prayer in the world religions. We can learn principally, I'm drawn to currently learning from the Buddhist tradition, because they have a 2,500-year-old tradition, which again emerges from the Vedas, emerges from the rishis and the seekers in the Indian forests that stretch back millennia. They have sciences, they have ways of deep interior um, meditation that one can apply to one's spiritual walk as a Christian. This is what Thomas Merton did. This is what Father B. Griffiths did, Henry Lasso, many Catholic monks have done and do. In these days, we've got people like Brother David Stendhal Rast. This book is called Deeper Than Words, Living the Apostles' Creed. And it's like getting beyond mere conceptual divisiveness. I mean, what difference does it make? We can define God if we don't know God. God is a mystery beyond any words that we can apply. And it does help to use biblical language, obviously. But if we just get stuck there, then our spiritual life is little more than listening to lectures. And inevitably, well, Paul warns us, the word kills, but the spirit gives life. How do we encounter that spirit? How do we encounter it? Through prayer, through meditation. And I think if I'm honest, nobody ever taught me to go as deep as the Buddhists did. And, it's not a game of top trumps, it's a game of reality. They really showed me how to go inside to the deep levels of being. And it was straight after my first Vipassana course that I felt I wanted to spend time in churches as opposed to in bars and other places of ill repute. It was after the stillness and the going within, learned in the Buddhist practices, that actually I was drawn to the figure of Jesus Christ. I wasn't drawn to dogmatic divisions. Who's right? Is it the Copts? Is it the Catholics? Is it the Protestants? Or is it this or that? I was drawn to the beauty of the agape of Jesus. I was drawn to the incarnational symbolism of Christ, that Christ was the visibility of the Tao, the visibility of God, where perhaps the East was presenting a more nebulous figure, at least the way I was understanding it at that time. But again, if we get caught, this is where B. Griffiths says, if we get caught in the symbols, if we get caught in the images and the words too much, we lose the mystery underneath, and we lose its relevance to us. And we can have a PhD in Noah's Ark studies, and yet be a complete wretch in our interior life. Another book by B. Griffiths. Get these very cheaply secondhand nowadays. This was a series of talks given to a Christian community on interior prayer and using a word or a phrase, Maranatha or some other word, to anchor the chattering mind and to find focus, what the Buddhists call samatha, leading to insight, vipassana. And of course, we've got this old classic, The Cloud of Unknowing, and other works, probably, they say, written by a 13th century Carthusian monk or novice. Well, no, a Carthusian monk writing to a novice who was learning interior prayer. And this is all about placing under the cloud of unknowing all of our ideas and concepts, even our ideas of God, our ideas of the Virgin Mary, our ideas of church, our ideas of dogmas, that if we're not careful, imprison us and cage us in a very limited worldview. Um, playing party politics. I certainly didn't sign up for that as a Christian convert in my 20s. No way, Jose. The cloud of unknowing is about placing all of that under the cloud to experience God directly. I'll leave it there.